I'm excited. I love marketing. Marketing is the oldest profession in the world. I know some people think it's something else, but no, marketing makes the world go around. Nothing happens without marketing. And under that marketing umbrella, you can put sales, you can put advertising, you can put all sorts of stuff. But today on the show, Lori Turner Wilson is disrupting the marketing agency industry by delivering guaranteed results. This is crazy. It sounds like one of those funny commercials where they're selling, 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 going crazy. Lori Turner Wilson, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I'm excited to have you here and talking about marketing, one of my favorite all-time subjects, as well as we're going to be talking about your book, B2B. The B2B Marketing Revolution. You can get it at wherever you get your favorite marketing books. And so, first of all, Laura, I want to ask you, what was the inspiration behind writing this book?
Well, it started actually at a very young age. I was marketing from the age of 13. You talk about the oldest profession. I was from the age of 13 before I even knew it was marketing. I started my own business. It was a dog show of all things. And I have to say, I marketed the hell out of it. And I didn't even understand the principles of sales and marketing, but I knew I had a passion for persuading people to take action and to follow me and to, join my cause, whatever that might be. And so if you fast forward, I spent 15 years, my first 15 years out of school in enterprise marketing for Fortune 1000 companies, leading marketing and communications teams, and learned a hell of a lot along the way. But I had an opportunity in those roles to hire several of the top 10 largest ad agencies and marketing firms in this country, the names that you would know, Bert, the big boys. And they were wildly creative, like blew my socks off with innovation, but they were equally uninterested in metrics that actually matter, right? The things that matter to us as entrepreneurs and business owners, like gross profit, growth and gross profit. And trying to drag these agencies into peak performance was frustrating on its best day, and it was agonizing most of the time. And so it finally dawned on me that I should try to raise the bar in the industry that I love and create the agency that I ultimately couldn't find. And in 2006, Red Rover was born, and I spent the last 19 years proving the framework that I used inside of enterprise marketing to create truly predictable outcomes, trying to building this framework so it's adaptable for small and mid-sized companies that need it most. And that's the whole inspiration behind the book.
I love it. I love it. And here's something that a lot of people would be surprised to find out. So there are several awards that are given out to ad agencies, and not one of them have to do with ROI or metrics. They're all about creative and and just different things that sound good on the surface, but really the reason you're going to hire a marketer or an ad agency is to drive sales and revenue and all that stuff. And the fact that somebody could get an award for not doing that
Seems
tells
wrong,
you
right?
tells you that revolution is necessary. But it's so funny. All right, so let's talk about this because again, I think it's kind of a bold thing. Here you are, you're disrupting the marketing industry by putting your money where your mouth is. You literally guarantee a return on investment, which I love. This is bold. This is out there. It is disrupted. So talk about this. First of all, where did you get the courage and to make that kind of promise? Let's talk about that first.
So I was always looking for that agency when I was hiring them and couldn't find it. And I always knew I have this background in market research, and market research, really well executed market research, was always underpinning every strategy that I created in my enterprise marketing roles. It's how I created predictable outcomes at the end of the day. So I don't think it takes a hell of a lot of courage to predict your outcomes when you use the science side of marketing to ultimately let data insights drive your strategy. This business is art and science, and most advertising and marketing agency owners are great at the art side of it. These are creative directors, innovative folks, but the analytical, the business side of marketing, the science side of it, all of those data insights, that's not naturally where they're strong. And so, yes, it does take a bit of courage and conviction to stand behind your outcomes, but with the right infrastructure internally and the right framework for executing and the right level of market research, any company can do this. So this book is to teach any business owner that wants to do this independently what our playbook is. It is the 12 battles and mindset that we believe in, that every CEO and senior leader must overcome in order to create true predictability in their marketing outcomes. And it's what we use for our clients every day.
All right. So why do you think it is so difficult for marketers and marketing agencies to guarantee their outcomes?
Some of it's the practicality of the business. So 90% of agencies, marketing and advertising agencies, have 8 or fewer employees. They're tiny. I mean, there's 14,000 or so agencies across this country. 90% have 8 or fewer. They couldn't possibly have the infrastructure to have a deep market research set of capabilities that allows for this predictability. So that's part of it, right? The other part of it is not going to be very popular among my peers as soon as I say this, Bert, but they're not agencies aren't required to guarantee their outcomes because clients aren't demanding it at the end of the day. So there
Mm.
needs to be a revolution, and part of the message I'm sending is that the revolution has to start with clients. It has to start with your listeners. You have to understand that you can achieve predictability in your marketing, expect that of your agency, require that of them, because if you don't do it, they're not going to bring it to the table.
And what's so funny to me is that business owner, you would expect accountability from your employees. You
Yeah.
would expect accountability from just about everything in your business. So to me, to not expect some kind of accountability when it comes to your marketing, really the number one driver in your business just seems crazy. It seems like
Yeah.
like they're afraid to hold somebody accountable because they don't want to hear the ugly truth.
I don't know why. And that's so right. We treat marketing very differently than we do any other investment in our business. If we bought $100,000 piece of equipment, we would do our due diligence, our research. But if we spend $100,000 on marketing, we're throwing spaghetti at the wall. And I don't know why we think about that differently. And so when I back in my enterprise marketing days, when I'm trying to hire agencies that would do this, here are the reasons they gave me. And it's still the reasons that I hear today from agency owners. I can't guarantee outcomes because marketing is both art and science and therefore unpredictable. I can't predict something as fickle as consumer behavior. I can't control the whole conversion process. I don't control your sales team. How can I be held accountable to incremental gross profit if I don't control your sales team? But the truth is, I mean, and there is truth, by the way, in all of those. There's some truth in all of those. But in reality, with well executed market research, you can predict consumer behavior within a reasonable margin of error by looking deep data analysis of their past behavior and what they're disclosing to you about their future intentions to buy through really well done, unbiased market research. So the real reason at the end of the day, what I make of it, Bert, is that agencies don't guarantee their outcomes because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the courage and conviction to do it, and they don't have to.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think you're absolutely right. Even the big agencies would
Yeah.
probably use some of those same excuses for not delivering ROI, for not being held accountable. And what's so funny to me, because you mentioned salespeople, uh, salespeople are unpredictable.
Yeah. Right.
And they're constantly held what do you call it, accountable, right? There are, how many phone calls are you making? How many sales visits are you making? There's so many different ways. And to your point about being data driven, to your point of just in today's world, look, I can say this. I started marketing when I was in my 20s. I'm 60 plus now. So back then, when I was 20, you know, let's say up until the invention or creation of digital marketing, back then you would run an ad and you would literally have to wait weeks for the ad to be published, and then you'd
Right.
have to wait weeks for the results to come in. Today, you and I can publish a digital ad and know within just a few hours if that ad is working. Am I right, or did I miss something?
Yeah, it's minutes. It's almost real time, but the industry has not kept up with those advancements in technology, and it's kind of shocking. It feels to me, especially with the progress in AI over the past year or two, that the advertising and marketing agency industry is on the verge of obsolescence if we don't level up, if we don't elevate and catch up to the technology and the deep data analysis tools that exist for us. It's surprising. 19 years ago when I started this agency, I would have never dreamed that 19 years into the organization, my industry would look largely the same. And that's part of the message that I'm delivering. My hope is to leave a lasting effect on this industry and elevate it before it does slip into obsolescence.
Right, right. What do you see as the biggest mistake companies make with their marketing?
Oh, let's see. Well, number one, as passionate CEOs and senior leaders, we believe that no one could know more about our customers than we do, right? It's human nature. We live, eat, and breathe our business. We believe there's nothing that we could learn about our customers that someone on the outside would know. And from a market research perspective, it's the kiss of death. It's that it brings bias into everything that you do. Every element of your marketing strategy is dripping with your bias at the end of the day. And so you need some level of objectivity, really examining where the opportunities are within the market because your strategy is wholly dependent upon the validity of that market research. So that's one piece of it. Two other really important mistakes. One is we draft strategies, but then we don't relentlessly vet those strategies. We don't develop contingency plans. If strategy A goes sideways, what are the first three contingencies I'm going to deploy, and what's the trigger point for each one? We just throw it against the wall, wait a few months. If it doesn't work, we kill it, we move on to something else. And that relentless optimization just doesn't exist the way that it should. And it's so easy in our field to do that today. And then the last one is uh, failing to be comfortable developing a pay for performance team. And you talked about sales. Sales teams are pay for performance, right? It's eat what you kill
Right.
in most organizations. Why isn't marketing, whether it's an internal team or an external marketing team, paid in the same way? And in a perfect world, sales and marketing are compensated on the very same growth metrics, where at least half of their total compensation is in variable. And it's just unheard of in the marketing space. And great marketers aren't afraid of it because they know what the upside potential is, just like great hunters from a sales perspective aren't afraid of that either.
And I absolutely love that because it's absolutely true. You give me a top performing sales, and as long as that performing salesperson believes in the product, they will crush it each and every time from one organization to the next.
Yeah.
But it's how we, as a society of business owners, generally cannot find somebody who's willing to do marketing on a paid performance, which to me would kind of set you apart and would be disruptive. And on top of that, talk about keeping a client for long term.
Yeah.
That to me would be like the simplest thing to do. I'm going to show you that I can deliver what I say I can deliver, and based on my results, you're going to keep me hopefully forever.
Yeah, and part of the reason that there is such a hesitancy, even among internal marketing teams, to do that, to have a pay for performance structure, is that they don't have the framework for how to create that predictability. And this book, The B2B Marketing Revolution, gives the whole framework. It's everything, it's our playbook. My team was pretty concerned when I put this out for the world to see, but I'm tired of seeing all this waste in our industry. There's an epidemic of waste in marketing for whatever reason. And there's a pretty simple playbook for how you make sure that you've got predictability. And market research is part of it. It is about how you craft strategies grounded in that research, how you connect the dots between the research and the strategy, how you relentlessly optimize those strategies at the end of the day, and how you compensate your team. And those are some of the bigger ideas.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so real quick, I'm because of marketing, my background, one of my favorite things to do is talk about names. Red Rover, how did you come up with that name? What does it mean?
Yeah, interesting story. So, um, when we first first put this organization together, we had basically no time to come up with a brand name, and we started with the name Blue Moon. Actually, like the idea, it was like we spent 2 hours on it. It was the principle of we're developing predictability that you only find once in a blue moon. And fortunately, we found out a few weeks later that name was taken, and then we really dug in and we spent about 40 man hours working on a brand that would have legs, so to speak, that would seem familiar to people. And a lot of people believe they know Red Rover when I'm not sure that some of them do, because the name is just so familiar and it evokes this feeling of nostalgia when we were kids and played Red
Right?
Rover, which was, by the way, a pretty violent game if I remember correctly. But the objective of Red Rover, if you remember, was to break through the arms of the other team. And
Yes.
what we're doing here is break through. We're trying to create an absolute competitive advantage in marketing, not your product, not your service, but in marketing that's really difficult for competitors to replicate. So that's where the name started. And then plus, I'm a huge animal lover. I give my time, my dollars to, animal welfare charities, humane societies, the local rescues. And so we always knew that that Rover would be our mascot, kind of the voice of the brand.
I think from a sheer marketing, Rover is nostalgic. I mean, at least here in the US, if you hear that, you're automatically going to think, wow, that sounds familiar. Have I heard of these guys? And that's a big help. Years ago, I was at a mall in here in Gilbert, Arizona,
Yeah.
and I wanted some fresh produce. I kind of my go-to snack. And so I type in, in my phone, fresh produce near me.
Yeah.
And there was one just like a quarter of a block away within this outside mall area. I thought, oh, that's great. So I walk over there, and sure enough, there's this big sign that says fresh produce. And then you open the door, and it's women's clothing.
What?
Exactly. So, so I had to
Brand
take a
misalignment.
picture.
Yeah.
I had to take a picture. I'm doing a video, and the people at Fresh Produce Store must have seen me doing this video. They didn't know what I was doing, so they called security and said, "Hey, you can't do that." I can't. But anyway, but my point being, it's important to have a name that won't confuse your marketplace. Fresh Produce, when you're selling ladies fashion, I think is a bit confusing. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out. A little nugget for you guys if you're thinking about a name for your company, you know, think about that one. Anyway, all right. So in your book, I want to talk about this because in the book, and you mentioned this, you have 12 battles framework. So let's go through some of these battles. What's the most important, or what's the first battle that I should be concerned with?
Well, the first battle that's in there is that you accept that you deserve and will achieve guaranteed marketing outcome, which means you stop accepting the excuses. And one of the things I like to say is um, that you deserve guaranteed marketing outcomes, and anyone standing in your way should be lovingly removed. I'm from the South, so we got to throw the lovingly in there, but you have to just stop tolerating this subpar performance. And number one, if your internal team doesn't have the capability to guarantee outcomes, teach them, give them the framework, give them the education, show them where the upside is if they overperform the plan, and then require them to either step up or step out. And sometimes changes are necessary. And the same goes for your agency. So until you as a CEO or business leader really believe it can be done, understand how it can be done so you can lead a team that does this, then you got no hope of actually creating predictability at the end of the day. So that's the first and the most important shift in mindset. It all starts with mindset, just like everything, right?
Absolutely. No, and I love that. That the first battle is just accepting uh, that, hey, you deserve it, right? That you deserve a predictable ROI. And again, what's so funny to me is if you are part of a larger organization, maybe you have to answer to the board of directors, they would hold you accountable. If all of a sudden your sales are going down, they're going to hold you accountable. You could lose your job if you can't come to the board and say, this is what we're doing. This is what's happening, and blah, blah, blah. They're going to hold you accountable. All right. So the next battle, okay, so I've accepted. I love the fact that you highlighted it. So I accepted that the mindset that I now will accept. I will no longer accept excuses, but I will accept a guarantee ROI on my marketing. What's next?
So the next is that you've got to accept that you don't really know thy customer. And we talked about that for a minute. It's that bias that you have that creates flaws in your strategy that you're executing, and you are just entirely too close to it to be able to really glean the insights that can be found from well executed market research. So you have to accept that you don't know your customers as well as you do. In fact, in the book I outlined hundreds of data points that you should know about your customer. And if you do like exit interviews with customers leaving your organization, what do you think you're really getting a root cause? Do you think they're really telling you everything you need to know about why you lost that customer? What are they probably citing at the top of the list? Price, because it's the least controversial reason that someone can give you for leaving your company, but really it's often not the real reason. So there's all these insights around why do customers choose you over your competitors? How do you stack up against each of your, primary unique selling propositions against each competitor? What's your market share? What would it actually take for consumers to spend more with you, and why aren't they today? Why do they stay with you? Why do they leave you? What are the marketing channels where they're paying the most attention? Where are your competitors spending their marketing dollars? What's their ROI in every channel? All of that can be uncovered through marketing research. So there's literally hundreds of data points that can be gathered. And when you ask a CEO, do you know your customer and their demographics, their psychographics, why they buy from you, all those things, they say, sure, yeah, I know that better than anyone. But the practicality of it is when we come in and do market research for our clients, about half of those assumptions that they've made about their customers are wrong. So the strategy necessarily is wrong. It's the wrong strategy
Right.
with the wrong message. So that's what battle two is about. It's about accepting that you don't know them as well as you could and being open to the idea that market research can give you those insights.
I love that. I love that. And also I would add this. Uh, what is it? Pride comes before the fall.
Yeah.
So, if you're so arrogant that you think you have nothing to learn about your customers, or you know everything and you have nothing to learn about marketing, then most likely you're going to have some serious problems. Not that I want to go down this rabbit hole, but Tesla to me is going to be an interesting example because he did not, Elon Musk is the face of Tesla, and he has spent millions of dollars being the face of Tesla and SpaceX and some of these other products or companies that he's behind. And now all of the stuff, people are customers are revolting. They're dropping Tesla stock. They're dropping the Tesla product. Just recently, he had another Cybertruck recall. And so I think if you were to ask him prior to him getting involved in politics, hey, do you think this is going to affect, and maybe somebody asked him that, do you think this is going to affect Tesla? Oh, no, this is not, my customers are behind me. I'm sure that's what he thought. This is not going to affect me at all. Surprise, you didn't know what you didn't know. So it's going to be an interesting experiment to follow and see where it ends up.
That's it's a quintessential influencer marketing debate. Influencer marketing, when you have a single influencer that is driving your brand's sales revenue, it's risky because yes, whether you're the CEO and founder of that organization or a paid influencer, if your beliefs no longer align with the market that's spending money on your brand, you can go into brand irrelevance really quickly, and there's risk with that brand and the stock. A lot of risk in having money in Tesla right now. So I'll be curious to see what it looks like in a year.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is going to be interesting. All right, so today we're talking about the B2B marketing revolution, guaranteed ROI on your marketing, a battle plan for guaranteed outcomes. I love this so much. All right, let's talk about number three, battle plan number three.
Yeah, that's you champion market research as a do or die investment. So it's a spinoff of number two. And I'll just give you the high level of what a market research protocol looks like that gives you predictability at the end of the day. And you can't cut corners with this. And by the way, we did this massive study of mid-market B2B CEOs and senior marketing leaders last year. And so it was companies that generate 10 to 100 million in annual revenue. And we asked them, of these common research protocols, which ones have you implemented over the last 3 years? Most of these companies on average, I should say 55% or so of them are implementing none of these market research protocols. So huge opportunity here for you to really stand out and make marketing your differentiator. So you need to be implementing both a qualitative and a quantitative research protocol. So qualitative, think about, you want to talk to your customers, your lost customers, your prospective customers. You want to talk to your internal stakeholders that know your brand well, that know what your competition is doing. You want to research your competitive set to see where they're spending money on marketing and how their value proposition stands up against you. You want to look at all of these qualitative research methods in order to understand the boundaries, the confines of the themes that you ultimately want to then take into a quantitative research protocol and test it. So we might uncover 25 potential themes that could allow us to grow this business, but then we need to take those qualitative findings and vet them against a statistically valid audience size. So think a massive survey to the market, to those that do business with you and don't do business with you, to validate or invalidate some of that thinking, to make sure we understand what direction this plan needs to go in at the end of the day. So it takes a combination of those two types of protocols. The whole research playbook is in the book. And there's actually on marketingtoolsforyou.com, there's a website we've created just for this. There are 50 free resources that are all referenced in the book that will give your listeners the scripts, the tools, the platforms, the templates, everything they need to execute the market research protocol, and really the whole book.
And that website is marketingforyou.com.
Marketingtoolsforyou.com.
Marketingtoolsforyou.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Right.
I do want to talk about, again, to me, this is so critically important. I'm going to skip down to battle framework number 6. You torch your existing strategy unapologetically if needed. Talk about this, because I think this is the hardest thing for most people to do, is to let go and start over again. Talk about this.
Yeah. One of the questions we asked survey respondents in that survey last year was, are you investing in a marketing strategy that is underperforming? And why are you doing that? And 33% of respondents said they are investing in a marketing strategy that's underperforming, and they're doing it because they've already invested too much in it. It's the sunk cost fallacy, right?
Right.
We've already put $100,000 into it. Why would we stop now? And it's not generating an ROI. So if 33% of CEOs and senior leaders know that they're doing that, how many don't know? How many have a blind spot there? So you've got to be prepared to scrap everything and start over, especially if you don't have clarity into how your current strategy is performing. And sometimes removing all of it from the table, starting with an absolutely clean slate, is the only way to see the real opportunity ahead of you. So one of the things I like to do is, if you're really unsure if your current marketing plan is performing, take it all off the table, have your team come back to you and defend every strategy, even those you've invested in before. Have them bring innovative new strategies to the table, but nothing makes the cut unless they presented the ROI case for it. You've validated the assumptions in that ROI math. They need to be defending every strategy every quarter, every year. So a lot of time, this is a really interesting statistic that might make your stomach churn. A lot of the stomach of your listeners churn in a lot of cases, but of the 300 clients that we've done business with over the past 2 decades, we track a number of stats across them. One of them is, what percentage of the plan that we inherited, what percentage of the budget of that plan was wasted due to lack of sufficient market research? On average, across 300 clients, that number is 60%. And here's how we know that's true. The research pointed us in a different direction with their plan, but for a short period of time before we implemented the new plan, we just cut off the funding to the 60% that we thought was not going to perform. And we waited the length of their sales cycle to see the impact. No impact. So
What a great way of teaching that lesson, right? Is we're going to just cut
well,
that
and
off.
And so I really encourage a lot of business leaders to just stop what you're doing in marketing altogether, reassess every element, look at the insights and the ROI of each particular element of your strategy, and really consider if it's part of the go forward plan. There can't be anything sacred. There can't be, we've always done this, this is tradition. Your strategy has to be based on the research, not tradition.
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the biggest business killers is that that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's the way our competitors are doing it. Well, again, going back to that mindset that I know it all, I don't want to change, whatever. It's sometimes it's pride and ego, sometimes it's lazy, and there's always that fear. Man, if you know this is barely working, but if I
Yeah.
change this and scrap it, what if it doesn't work? And I've always told my customers, look, it's just a matter of, you know, we can figure it out. But again, it's like anything else. You have to have the courage to take that first step. And sometimes you got to torch it all. That's just it.
Well, and confirmation bias comes into play there, where we only pay attention to the facts and evidence that align with what we already believe. And so if you really have if you decide you're going to pay your internal team based on their performance or your external marketing team, all of a sudden they're going to have bias. They're not going to be looking at your strategy from a place of tradition. They're only going to be looking at it from the perspective of what's actually going to drive powerful outcomes at the end of the day.
Yes. All right. So, okay. So I'm going to skip down a little bit. And again, this is really building your business by the numbers. And what's so funny to me is so many businesses do operate by the numbers. But when it comes to marketing, again, we've already covered this. They don't. So
Yeah.
battle framework number 11. I love this. You require a powerful marketing dashboard and documented process. I think this is probably one of the killers for not just small businesses, for all businesses. So talk about this battle frame or this battle.
Yeah, there are three major metrics that you need to be looking at, and they aren't reach, frequency, impressions, or clicks. None of those things. Those are leading indicators, but they're not really what matter at the end of the day. You want to be tracking marketing ROI or MROI. And it's an easy calculation, but I want to encourage your listeners to look at it differently. Number one, instead of using sales in that calculation, I want them to use gross profit. I want to actually know if marketing is driving actual profit at the end of the day. I also want them to make sure that there aren't hidden costs they're leaving out. So, the calculation is sales minus marketing costs divided by sales. I want your listeners to be looking at what are the platform cost? What is the cost of every person on staff that's contributing or spending any time in marketing? The CEO might spend 5% of his or her time on marketing and leading the marketing effort. 5% of their salary needs to be included. It needs to be all encompassing, all your agency costs, your internal team cost, all of that. So marketing ROI is the simplest one, but there's two other metrics really important. You want to look at cost to acquire a customer, and 90% of the companies that we run across that come into our doors at Red Rover don't know this calculation. What is it actually costing you to bring a new customer in the door? And then I also want them to look at lifetime value. What's the actual value of a customer? If they're going to spend, let's say $100,000 we're going to make $100,000 in gross profit off of an average customer in a year, and they spend 3 years with us on average, the lifetime value of that customer is $300,000. And marketing's job is not just to bring in new customers, but to grow the lifetime value, to upsell and cross sell and grow that relationship once they're on board. So you've got to look at that too. So if your internal team or your agency aren't measuring those three metrics, start there. That's where the rubber meets the road, the most important three metrics. And there ought to be a single CEO level dashboard that the leaders of every company are looking at, that allow you to make directional decisions about your investment. If you had a windfall first quarter, you've got an extra $100,000 to spend, where does it go? And the where does it go is the hardest question to answer. And part of the reason that we don't know is because most companies don't implement attribution modeling, which is a whole science and a discussion in and of itself. And I know you're familiar with it, but it's the idea of deciding, of learning through the data, which of the of the customer touch points along the path. Most customers are going to engage with your brand at least 8 times before they ever pick up the phone or they ever consider making a purchase from you online. What are those touch points, and which of those is actually most influential in a customer's decision to buy from you? Because that's where you want to put that $100,000. So most companies they're not measuring the big three metrics. They're not actually looking at attribution modeling to make sure they understand what's driving a customer's decision to buy. So that's at the heart of the idea of a dashboard and a scorecard. And then you compound that with what creates predictability in any business, in operations, in HR, and sales: documented processes. Every one of your marketing processes of consequence should be documented so that no matter what reasonably intelligent person you put into that seat, they can follow that process and repeat what you're doing. And that's how you get optimum valuations when you're looking to transact your company.
I love that. I totally agree with that. So many companies have no documented processes, or they have the very basics. And I think that to your point, you should have documented processes for every department,
Yeah.
and setting the standard. Hey, from now on, back to battle framework number one, we're no longer going to accept not knowing how much money we're making from our marketing. We're no longer going to accept poor marketing performance just because we've always done it in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that uh, to me, what's funny, what I've seen over and over again is when a company is truly successful, they're just making money hand over fist, which is not, let's say, not the only matrix of success, but for the most part, that's what most people look at, most investors look at. They tend to be very lax about tracking those numbers.
Yeah.
Now, conversely, when somebody is bootstrapping everything, that's when they're really like so conscious of, okay, we got this sale from here, we got to cut this back, we got to whatever. And it's funny to me because it seems like it's almost that consciousness should just get wider and wider the bigger you get. You need more data, not less.
Yeah.
Let me.
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say there was a principle that I learned at Hampton Hotels when I was back at Hilton Hotel Corporation. And it goes to the idea of relentlessly optimizing your plan at the end of the day. And something you said sparked this idea in me. This was, I started marketing back when you were marketing, when we didn't have all these data insights, right? It was a lot more manual, as you said. Direct mail is how we booked rooms across the country with Hampton. And we would do these massive 100 cell, sometimes hundreds of cell split tests. And it wasn't, as easy as it is with digital marketing, but we were testing subject lines and headlines and body copy and different graphic variables, and the packaging. Is it going to be a postcard or a mailer or a window envelope? And we would be testing hundreds of variables at a time in order to arrive at the combination of variables that spiked, that got a little bit higher booking rate. And then we would put more money into those combinations, and we tested again at a larger sample size and a larger sample size 6 or 7 times. That applies today in the digital marketing realm, but it's so much faster and more efficient to accomplish that. We relentlessly optimize so many areas of our business, processes included, as we were talking about, but we don't do that in marketing. And that's the difference maker in actually achieving maximum ROI and barely getting by.
I totally agree. And because I've talked to so many CEOs, and there's people who are better at numbers. Let's just, you know, uh, throw that out there. I'm not the biggest or the best numbers guy, but guess what? I hire that out. And now
Yeah.
hire somebody who can explain it to me like he would explain it to, an 8-year-old kid. Okay, this is what's happening. And so one of my favorite stories comes from this guy named Richard Branson. I don't know if
Yeah.
any of you guys have heard of Mr. Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson. So Richard Branson, billionaire, Virgin Airlines, Virgin Records, you name it. He's got a lot of Virgin brands out there. And he was in a business meeting, and the business, you know, somebody threw out a term, and it's an accounting term, and I can't remember which one it is. And Richard Branson stops the meeting and says, "I don't know what that is. Can you explain it?" And if that would have been anybody else, they probably would have been laughed at or maybe even been replaced. But it's Richard Branson. And so they had to stop and explain it to him. My point being is if you don't know, find out. You cannot have such a big ego that you're willing to let your company fail because you're not willing to say, I don't know what that means. It just blows me away, but I see it happen quite often. The you think you're the CEO, so you have to have all the answers for everything. And I think the best CEOs, again, like a Richard Branson, they find the smartest people to work for him.
Yeah, exactly. And this book actually was written, Bert, for CEOs. It's not a book about how to implement Facebook ads. It's not in the tactics like that. It's how at a CEO level do you lead from a position of strength? How do you elevate outcomes? How do you give your team the training and development they need in order to ultimately deliver predictable outcomes for you? It's not a CEO's guide for understanding the mechanics of marketing because that's not that's not usually in the job set, right? For most CEOs.
Well, and you know what? And I'm glad you brought that up because tactics change. So my last question is, what advice do you give to women who want to lead in a male dominated business like marketing?
Oh, that's a terrific question. There are so few women CMOs in the world. I used to know that number, but it's not grown much in the last 10 or 20 years, which is really surprising. Um, my best advice is that let your results speak for themselves. No matter who you are or what gender you are or what background you come from, results are the way to advance your career in this business. And the more predictable those results are, the more valuable you are to the organization. I also love speaking about I love a research-backed strategy because it comes from a place of logic. And logic is what ultimately informs larger budgets, more significant investment. It is what gives you predictability in your strategy at the end of the day. It can be tough to be a woman CMO or a woman CEO or business leader. There are obstacles that we have to overcome, but when you are outproducing everyone around you, it no longer matters.
And I totally agree with that. I mean, if you look at our history, whether you're female, whether you're a minority, results speak for themselves. And man, the deck may be stacked against you. People dislike you. They don't want you there. But
Mhm.
eventually, over time, your results break those barriers. And we see it time and time again. So I love that piece of advice. Lori, it's been a blast having you on, and I want to quickly give out it's tools for your no. Give me the link again for your tools.
Yeah, there's two websites that are really important for your listeners.
Okay,
Marketingtoolsforyou.com gives them 50 plus free resources for how to execute a results guaranteed marketing strategy inside of their company. And then there's some special offers just for your listeners if they go to our main website, marketingresultsguaranteed.com/podcast. There's some podcast specials on there. Use the code podcast and you'll get some special offers just exclusively for your listeners.
excellent, Lori. It's been a blast, and want to thank you so much for stopping by.
I had a blast too. Thanks for the invite.